Hey there, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to this week's Weather Extra. I'm meteorologist Jillian Johnson. Our calendars switched over to August, but unfortunately, the same unrelentless, brutal heat that was with us in July continued in Central Texas heading into the new month. July 2023 was an awfully hot month for millions around the globe and will be going down in the record books. For vast parts of North America, China, Asia, Africa, and Europe, it has been a very cruel summer. July 2023 will go down as the hottest month on record for the planet, with some climate scientists saying it could be the hottest in at least 120,000 years. This July follows the planet's hottest June on record. Throughout the month of July, NOAA tallied that the United States broke over 3,000 heat records. This historic heat wave included a 128-degree temperature in Death Valley, California, and 31 straight days above 110 degrees in Phoenix, Arizona. There were also 44 days in a row where El Paso was sitting at or above 100 degrees. In some of the international heat records, China registered an all-time high temperature for the country of a whopping 126 degrees. And in the Middle East, the heat index reached 152 degrees at the Persian Gulf International Airport. That nears the limit of human survival. According to climate scientists, these extreme temperatures are the result of climate change and the warming weather pattern known as El Niño, which is responsible for a hotter than usual year. The heat wave in Europe ignited several fires across the region. Blazes scorched hundreds of thousands of hectares across Greece, Italy, Portugal, Spain, France, and Croatia. The number of fires across the EU rose to 991 in July, which is nearly double the yearly average for this time of the year. And in North Africa, more than 30 people lost their lives in wildfires that swept through northern Algeria. And the unprecedented wildfire season continues in Canada, where officials say over 30 million acres have burned. So how did July shape up for us here in Central Texas? Well, if you went outside at all, then you know it was a scorching hot month. The normal average high for the month of July is 96.7 degrees. Now this July, we had an average high of 101.1 degrees. Now there were 29 days out of the 31 last month that featured above normal temperatures, with 23 of those featuring temperatures at or above 100 degrees. Now the extreme heat is usually accompanied by a lack of rainfall, which is exactly what happened for us in Central Texas. We only saw one day out of the last 31 that featured some rain last month, and that rain wasn't even enough to help us out anyway. July 2023 enters the top 10 list for driest Julys on record. We only had a trace amounts of rain in Waco, Temple, and Killeen, with some Central Texans at least receiving some rain, a little bit of rain that is, in Hamilton, Goldthwaite, and also there into Centerville. But as a whole, most of our area missed out on the beneficial rainfall last month. That trace amount of rain recorded in July now ties with the years 1963 and 1924 for the fourth driest July on record. One of the consequences of extreme heat and lack of rain is seeing our drought conditions worsen across Central Texas. Here's a look at our drought monitor in early June, where areas along and also along and east of I-35 had no signs of drought, but mainly moderate drought conditions here further out to the west. Now, this was the best shape that our drought had been in all year long, thanks to that recent rainfall in the spring. But after that, the wet spring, the faucets shut off during the summer, abnormally dry conditions started to build back in further eastward, crossing over the I-35 corridor, and that's where we're really beginning to look at the drought here at the beginning of July. Now, we all lived through that very, very hot month of July, and we just continue to saw the dry and hot weather pattern, and that significantly worsened our drought conditions across Central Texas. So here's a look at the drought monitor from the end of the month of July. Extreme drought has taken over the western half of Central Texas, but the severe drought started to push a little bit further eastward as well, too. Thankfully, there hasn't been too much change in our drought monitor from the end of July into August, as you could see here, but we do expect the drought conditions to worsen as the lack of rain and heat unfortunately look like they're going to be sticking around. Now, another thing that impacts, we feel the impacts of because of the very hot and dry conditions are our area at lake levels. And for an updated look at the latest numbers, here's meteorologist C.D. Finley.
Well, that is right, Julian. The dry weather has definitely been felt all across central Texas. You can even see how it's been affecting our lake levels as well. Lake Waco right now is sitting about 453 feet of water, 578 feet in Lake Belton, 526 feet in Lake Whitney, and then 606 feet in Lake Stillhouse Hollow. Now, all of these orange numbers right here are about how far below where we want these lake levels to be. We're about 9 feet below where we want to be in Lake Waco, 15 feet below where we want to be in Lake Belton, 6 feet below where we want to be in Lake Whitney, and about 16 feet below where we want to be in Stillhouse Hollow. So moral of the story is all of these area lakes are below where they need to be right now, and they're not even at full capacity because of that. We're sitting about 60% capacity all across the board, with the exception of Lake Whitney, which is at 77.9% capacity. And even in the last month, we've seen the lake level drop about a foot, maybe even close to 2 feet, depending on where you're at. Lake Waco has dropped about 1.35 feet in the last month, 1.24 feet in Lake Whitney, and then pretty close to 2 feet of a drop in Lake Whitney, or excuse me, Lake Belton and Stillhouse Hollow there as well. And so you may have noticed that there have been some water conservation orders being put out in the last month or so, and this is why. We're hoping that maybe as we head into the final weeks of the summer and getting into the month of August, we may start to see a little bit more rain that will help out with that. But for now, we are currently sitting pretty dry in our area lakes.
Yeah, and just like you heard from CD, our area lake levels are decreasing due to the lack of rain and the extreme heat, but those things are also increasing our fire activity too. Central Texas saw 3 different wildfires start during the last week of July, and a few more added this past week too. With the consistent triple-digit temperatures and dry conditions now continuing into the new month, we'll keep an increased risk of wildfires in the area until we get a good soaking rain event. Now, the increase in fire danger has put all of Central Texas under an active burn ban. A burn ban prohibits anyone and everyone from taking part in outdoor burning of any sort and are often put into place when drought conditions exist, like we have across our region right now. Excessive heat and lack of rain have also been the major weather story across the state too. Drought conditions have worsened statewide, which have caused around 65% of Texas counties to be put under active burn bans. Now, when a fire or wildfire exceeds local capacities, the Texas A&M Forest Service can be called in. They'll bring extra firefighter or even heavy firefighting equipment. The associate director says that 9 out of 10 wildfires in the state of Texas are caused by people, and that 90% of wildfires they see are us doing a normal day-to-day activity that starts a spark and creates a heat source.
Also be cognizant of simple things like driving over dead grass or parking on dead grass. Undercarriage of the car's exhaust system underneath the car is extremely hot. And if you park or drive over dead grass, it can actually ignite that grass and start a wildfire.
And it's not just us here at home dealing with the perfect combo of heat and dry weather. Explosive, out-of-control wildfires have forced people from their homes and created dangerous conditions for firefighters in 2 different regions across the nation. Mike Valerio has the latest.
Furious flames scorching the earth, spewing thick, toxic smoke, creating an apocalyptic-like landscape along the U.S.-Canada border in Washington.
You could actually feel the heat from it, across the lake. And we also could hear the roar from the fire at one point too, as it would hit the bigger clumps of trees.
The raging flames of the Eagle Bluff fire threatening properties and triggering evacuations.
The first priority is always human life and safety.
It's impressive, it's scary, but it's fascinating to watch how fast it moves, and then how you'll be watching it, and then about 100 meters ahead, a spark will happen and another tree will go up, and then the main bulk of the fire catches up to that, and it was moving so fast north.
It's a similar situation on the California-Nevada border.
There's a haze, nothing, you can't see ahead. You can't see the mountain.
With people fleeing the flames of the York fire.
We've got all of our animals that we could take with us. Some of them we had to turn loose, the cattle, and the sheep.
Forceful winds are fueling the fires, the extreme weather creating extremely dangerous conditions, spawning a vortex of flames and smoke.
People's lives are, at stake, the people fighting the fires. It's a hazard. Fire and wind is not mixed.
In Los Angeles, I'm Mike Valerio.
We're right in the middle of the hottest time of the year in Central Texas, and our AC units have been working overtime trying to keep us cool, but that impacts your monthly bills. Coming up after the break is this week's Degrees of Science, where Brady Taylor talked with a member from the Department of Energy to get tips that can help you save money on your energy bills. Those tips coming up on the other side of this break.
A large part of the country has been dealing with pretty extreme heat as we've went throughout the summer. A large part of the country has been dealing with pretty extreme heat as we've went throughout the summer months, and a lot of folks probably getting sticker shock by seeing those electric bills and those energy bills. Today we're talking with Mandy Mahoney. She's with the Department of Energy's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. Mandy, thanks for joining us. First question, for folks that are dealing with this extreme heat, what are some little things that we may not think of that could help to conserve energy and help out those energy bills?
When you think about what makes you have a high energy bill, well, first it's, do you have leaky windows and doors? We often talk about it in the cold, but it's just as important here in the hot states that you have use insulation, that you caulk as much as you any openings in your house so that you're not letting that hot air in. So thinking about, do you need to upgrade the insulation in your attic? Like you might be overdue for doing something like that. Putting insulation in is the best way to not only make your house more comfortable, but also drop your energy bills. And then secondly, who thinks about their water heater? You can set it. You can actually adjust the temperature on your water heater down, and that's a big, big energy suck, a big appliance. So adjusting the temperature that your water heater is set at is another super easy way to reduce your energy bills.
When we start talking about energy efficiency, I know that's part of what your office does. Is it mainly finding new appliances and newer stuff, or is there ways you can make maybe older appliances and stuff efficient?
Sure. Yeah, there are definite ways you can make older appliances more efficient. I think one is washing machines, for instance. We encourage people to wash on cold, then not using hot water. That saves you energy. You don't have to buy a new appliance or anything to do that. Also, like I said, we're changing the temperature on your water heater. Third, thinking about when do you need to run your dryer versus can you air dry things either on a drying rack or on a clothes rack. I know in these high temperatures, your stuff will dry really fast outside. And then thinking about the insulation in your attic and the insulation in your house, making your house more energy efficient. That way, we highly recommend before you even ever think about buying new appliances, because then you can buy an appliance that's the right size for your house, not something that's oversized and is going to be more expensive and use more energy.
So is there a way about getting an energy assessment for your house to find out kind of where you're good and not? What is that, and how does that help homeowners?
Sure. Yeah, energy assessments are so helpful. One, if you go on the DOE website, we have information about how you can do your own energy assessment. Another thing, though, is that there are wonderful contractors who can come in and do this. And oftentimes, our electric utilities will have rebates so that it'll help pay for the cost of that audit.
Speaking of renewable energy, and I know there's a lot of credits you can get for putting in solar panels and stuff like that. I know a lot of people wonder what's the payoff of, is it worth the money you're going to put into solar panels to how long it takes to save money? Is that something that people could think about that could help their power bills, maybe not this summer, but moving forward?
For sure. Solar is a great solution, especially in places like Texas where y'all have many, many sunny days. But the cost of solar panels is going down year over year, and also incentives from the utilities, incentives that the federal government offers. It can make the payback much shorter than people often perceive. But I will say, before you put solar on, you really need to think about making sure that you have all the insulation you need in your attic so that you can buy the right size solar panels that are going to meet the needs of your house.
To hear more on how you can save money on your energy bills, scan the QR code right there on your screen. Weather Extra returns after this. Welcome back to Weather Extra. Hurricane season has been off to a quiet start so far, but we're heading into the most active time of the year for the Atlantic. For an updated look on the tropics, we turn it over to meteorologist Sean Bellafury.
The 2023 Atlantic hurricane season is 1/3 of the way through, and it has been a pretty quiet season so far, which is pretty typical. The first 2 months of the year, or first 2 months of the season rather, typically don't feature too much in the way of tropical storms or hurricanes, but August, September, and October are the 3 months that have the most frequency of tropical storms and hurricanes across the tropical Atlantic. So far this season, we have had 4 named storms. There was also a storm that formed just off the Carolinas in the beginning of January, which would have gotten a name. However, it didn't. So technically 5 storms, but 4 named storms. Don was the most recent just a couple of weeks ago, and that became the season's first hurricane. Only a Category 1 storm for a couple of hours in time. As we move our way deeper into the season, of course, these are the names that we will hopefully not be seeing. And the forecast going forward for the hurricane season, I don't want to say it's a coin flip, but it almost kind of is. The biggest question mark is what's going on with El Nino. El Nino, which is really starting to emerge, causes increased wind shear across the Atlantic, which is not good for tropical storms and hurricanes to develop. But will the high sea surface temperatures across the basin kind of offset that? That's the big question mark. And I want to show you the wind shear across the basin. Everywhere that is shaded is where the winds are too strong, unfavorable for tropical storms and hurricanes to form. This is the main development region right here. And you can see there really isn't much wind shear going on. And unfortunately, the sea surface temperatures are very hot too. 80 degrees is usually a good threshold for tropical storms and hurricane activity, and you can see right across the basin we're seeing those sea surface temperatures 80 degrees or above. Now in the month of August and early September especially, that's when Texans really need to keep an eye on things, because the prevailing average track in August takes storms from off of Africa, usually moves them across the Caribbean Sea and moves them into the Gulf of Mexico. And as we take a look at tropical satellite right now, there really isn't too much going on. There is one wave that is just south of the Cabo Verde Islands that could potentially get its act together over the next couple of days. But there's also a fair amount of thunderstorms that have fired up over Africa. Eventually, these could become the seeds for future tropical storms and hurricanes as we move deeper into August. Reporting in the studio, Sean Bellafiore, KWTX News 10.
It's been more active in the Western Pacific than it has been recently in the Atlantic. China and Japan are now in their peak typhoon season, which is through August and September. At least 21 people died as record-breaking rain fell and tens of thousands evacuated as massive floodwaters washed away their homes. CNN's Anna Corinne is in Hong Kong with more.
The death toll from former super typhoon Doksuri continues to rise across China. 21 people now dead, according to authorities. 12 of those were in Beijing, with another dozen still missing. The storm has dumped the heaviest rainfall over the capital ever recorded in 140 years. Heavy rains began pummeling Beijing and surrounding areas last Saturday, with the average rainfall for the month of July falling on the capital in just 40 hours. Severe flooding washed away cars, damaged buildings and roads, with many residents needing to be evacuated. In neighbouring Hebei province, over 800,000 people were evacuated. Authorities say 9 people were killed, 6 are still missing. Chinese leader Xi Jinping called for every effort to rescue those lost or trapped by the rain. State media reports that maximum rainfall was recorded in 10 weather stations in Hebei province, also breaking historical records. The local meteorological service says rainfall in Beijing and Hebei is expected to ease today, while the storm moves towards northeastern China. As we know, China has been experiencing extreme weather and posting record temperatures this summer, which scientists believe has been exacerbated by climate change. Another typhoon is now heading towards China. Typhoon Kanun, the 6th storm this year, is powerful and slow-moving. Currently, it's lashing Japan, although authorities say it's weakened slightly. It's reached winds of 185 kilometres an hour, that's 115 miles per hour, the equivalent of a Category 3 Atlantic hurricane. So far, 1 person has died. Kanun has knocked out power to 1/3 of homes in Okinawa. Phone and internet connections have been disrupted. The airport in Okinawa's capital has been closed for a second day. Okinawa is home to the bulk of US forces based in Japan. This typhoon is expected to move towards China and Taiwan later this week. Anna Corin, CNN, Hong Kong.
Welcome back to Weather Extra. With the unrelentless scorching heat, the summer sun has gotten a lot of attention lately. But as our calendars switched over to August, the moon took over the headlines as 2 of the 4 supermoon events of this year take place during this month. Now, the month of August kicked off with a big, bright lunar display, and we're expecting another at the end of the month as the moon nears its closest point to Earth. When this orbital position coincides with a full moon, it's called a supermoon. Supermoons generally look brighter and bigger than other full moons, and this month there will be 2 of them. The first supermoon of the month was back on August 1st, peaking Tuesday afternoon. The month of August's full moon is known as the Surgent moon. If you missed that one, you still have another chance this month, as we're expecting another supermoon on August 30th. On that day, a full moon will appear at the closest point to our planet this year, making it a super blue moon. Now, blue moon is the second full moon in a single month, but make sure to catch this one because you won't see a blue supermoon again until 2032. So mark your calendars for Wednesday night, August 30th. And there's something else that's been a very nice treat for us over the last year: NASA's James Webb Telescope. The telescope is the most powerful telescope ever sent into space. It launched on December 25th back in 2021, and NASA shared its first set of images with us back on July 12th of last year. Over the course of the year, NASA shared numerous dropping pictures with the public and shared one to celebrate the telescope's first anniversary. The image shows the nearest star-forming region to Earth, located 390 light years away. It's called the Uffiyoki Cloud Complex. The complex contains 50 stars similar in mass to our sun. That means these future planetary systems may resemble what our own solar system looked like in the very beginning. So that's some pretty interesting stuff there. But that's all we have for you on this week's Weather Extra. Stay cool and hydrated, everyone. We'll see you again next weekend.